However, it was a joke that startled me because it made me think about Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, who recently made a huge announcement that caught the world's attention after a heartbreaking discovery that put his leadership and resolve to the test amid mounting challenges and growing controversies surrounding his stance on important issues. His revelation left many wondering what this meant for his legacy and the future of the Church. Join us as we explore the details of this announcement and the foundations of a visionary leader. Luis Antonio Tagle was his father. Manuel Tagle was of Tagalog descent, and his mother, Milagros Kikim, had Chinese-Filipino roots before he fully committed to family life. He was born on June 21, 1957, the eldest child in a deeply religious Catholic family. His paternal ancestry can be traced back to Imus, Cavite, where his grandfather, Florencio, was a member of the Spanish Christian Principala, a social elite before the 1896 Philippine Revolution. Unfortunately, Florencio was wounded in a bombing during World War. The second Tagle's educational journey started at St. Andrew's School in Parañaque, Rizal, where he finished elementary and high school by 1973. Influenced by his friendships with priests, he felt called to religious life and enrolled in the Jesuit-run San Jose Seminary, which later enabled him to study at Ateneo de Manila University, where he earned a Bachelor of Arts in Pre-Divinity in 1973 and a Master of Arts in. He pursued a doctorate in sacred theology at the Catholic University of Rome from 1987 to 1991, while studying theology at the Loyola School of Theology. In addition to attending classes at the Institute of Pope Paul V, Tagle studied in America under Joseph A. Konak, whose dissertation focused on episcopal collegiality in the teaching and practice of Paul VI. Konak hailed Tagle as one of the best students he had seen in more than 40 years, speculating that Tagle might have become Asia's leading theologian had he not chosen the path of the bishopric. After being ordained in the Diocese of Imus on February 27, 1982, he began his pastoral journey as an associate pastor at San Agustin Parish in Mendes Nunes, Cavite. He later earned honorary degrees from both Catholic Theological Union and Yale University, and demonstrated his fluency in Tagalog, English, and Italian. He also demonstrated his ability to read Spanish, French, Korean, and Latin. He assumed a variety of positions at the Diocese and Seminary of Imus, including spiritual director and rector. In 1997, Pope John Paul II appointed him to the International Theological Commission, where he worked with Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger Tytler. He also served as the parish priest at Nuestra Señora del Pilar Cathedral Parish and the Episcopal Vicar for Religious in the United States. From 1995 to 2001, he was a member of the editorial board for the History of Vatican II project. What kind of leader is Tagle, and why have his leadership abilities been? He was a leader of compassion and action, and his influence went far beyond his abilities in the fields of administration and theology. He was well known for his intelligence and empathy, and he genuinely embodied the principle that Pope Francis championed. His efforts were constantly directed toward improving the lives of the poor and marginalized, demonstrating a commitment to workable solutions and genuine change. One of his most important projects took place in sub-Saharan Africa, where many Catholics were struggling with severe economic difficulties. Rather than merely expressing support, Tagle took concrete steps. Under his direction, the Vatican collaborated with local communities to provide funds for schools and vocational training programs, establishing sustainable pathways for bettering lives. His mission went beyond merely reducing poverty. It also sought to strengthen faith. These initiatives demonstrated the Church's deep commitment to meeting Myanmar's material and spiritual needs, divided by political and ethnic conflict. Tagle played a crucial role in promoting reconciliation. He recognized that bringing about peace required more than just political agreements. It also required bridging religious divides and promoting communication. By bringing together Catholic and Buddhist leaders, he created a forum for understanding and unity that gave hope to communities facing division. What set him apart was his distinctive approach to enculturation, which included advocating for the inclusion of indigenous music, art, and language in Catholic teachings. As the president of Catos Internationalis, Tagle led the Share the Journey campaign to raise awareness about the struggles faced by migrants and refugees. His advocacy went beyond rhetoric. He personally visited refugee camps in Lebanon and Jordan, engaging with individuals, and he believed that the Church was not just an external entity within cultures, but an essential component of them. Tagle's leadership extended into urgent global issues, like poverty, migration, and climate change. He encouraged partnerships between the Vatican and secular organizations, emphasizing action over words. His vision included a church that actively pursued justice, standing in solidarity with the global community to tackle systemic challenges. It was clear that he was empathetic, as he used his platform to elevate their voices and remind the world of their shared humanity. In 2019, Pope Francis appointed Tet to lead the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples, placing him at the forefront of the Church's missionary endeavors. This position allowed him to supervise the spread of Catholic teachings, especially in regions where the Church was expanding significantly. His partnership with Pope Francis, which was based on mutual trust and shared values, made many people believe that Tagle would succeed him as Pope. His leadership style reflected Francis's warmth and humility, which allowed him to connect with common people, whether he embodied the approachable spirit that had won the hearts of millions, whether he was answering theological questions or feeding refugees. His rise was no accident. It was the result of a strong commitment to the values of compassion, inclusion, and tackling global issues. However, the road ahead for Tagle was paved with obstacles. Beneath the accolades, there were complex issues that would test his ability to lead the Church through its most difficult times. But why do people still oppose Tagle? Is there more to his story? Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle has often been seen as a frontrunner in discussions about the next pope. His compassionate leadership and global appeal have won praise, but some analysts contend that his path to the papacy is anything but certain. While his close relationship with Pope Francis has earned him a great deal of respect, they also bring certain challenges and controversies. Follow along to learn more about these issues. Challenges experts think Tagle needs to demonstrate that he is more than just an Asian Francis, and establish a distinctive identity that appeals to the College of Cardinals. 3 key elements have been found that could make his candidacy more difficult. First, Tagle faces fierce competition from other candidates, particularly Singaporean Cardinal William Goh, who is Asian and speaks English, which fits with the Church's increasing focus on pawns beyond Europe. But Goh is seen as someone who can relate to the Church's conservative factions, a skill that Tagle, who is known for his progressive views, may find challenging to imitate. Secondly, although many people celebrate Tagle's progressive image, it comes with risks. He has been a strong supporter of hospitality within the Church, has pushed for inclusivity, particularly with regard to LGBT Catholics, and has challenged divisive language. At a recent Lambeth conference, he warned against ethnic and cultural conflicts that could jeopardize the Church's mission, and criticized populists. Lastly, critics have pointed out that Tagle's perceived reluctance to adopt a firmer position on issues concerning China. The Vatican's relationship with Beijing is a delicate and complex topic, and some believe that Tagle's relative silence on this matter could undermine his candidacy. Observers speculated that other candidates might seem more united than Tagle, despite the fact that these views resonate with progressive Catholics, inclined to face these issues head-on, which could give them an advantage in the eyes of the cardinals. In addition to these specific obstacles, analysts noted that Tagle's resemblance to Pope Francis had generated both admiration and concern, because his language frequently echoed Francis's, particularly when it came to migration and populism. For example, they recalled Francis's comments upon his return from Kazakhstan, in which he presented migration as an opportunity to improve the cultural and intellectual landscape of the West. In a similar spirit, Tagle had cautioned against views that might jeopardize the Church's spiritual unity by highlighting the importance of hospitality and inclusivity. While these common ideals increased Tagle's popularity among progressives, they also strongly associated him with Francis's legacy, which some Church factions might consider a drawback. These factions seemed to prefer a leader who could demonstrate independence and provide a fresh viewpoint. Additionally, critics pointed to Tagle's time as Archbishop of Manila as adding to the complexity. The Manila Standard accused him of using the Church to further his partisan political agenda by publicly criticizing former President Rodrigo Duterte. According to reports, critics felt that Tagle had gone too far by allowing politically charged speeches that appeared to undermine Duterte's administration. They argued that this violated the Constitution's separation of church and state and cast doubt on Tagle's ability to remain impartial, which alarmed those who think the next pope should place a higher priority on spiritual leadership than political involvement. During his time in Manila, Tagle faced criticism for his handling of clerical misconduct. Critics said that he failed to hold some clerics accountable for their actions, raising questions about his ability to maintain discipline within the church. This perceived lack of firmness made some question whether Tagle had the authority and resolve necessary to effectively lead the global church. Why did Tagle keep quiet about the difficulties? Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle has long been considered a prominent candidate in the papal race, but his path to the office has not been without challenges. His charm, extensive experience, and global appeal have won him a lot of admiration, but skeptics frequently question whether he can rise above Pope Francis's shadow and forge his own leadership style. These doubts grew as analysts looked into his background and what motivated him to speak out after going through these hardships. The controversial agreement between Pope Francis and the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, aimed at improving relations between the Vatican and China, has drawn criticism from those who believe it undermines the Church's principles. Tagle, who shares Francis's cautious stance, has refrained from publicly criticizing the deal. This reluctance is particularly noteworthy, given Tagle's prominent positions within the Vatican, serving as prefect for the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples from 2019 to 2022, and later as pro-prefect of its successor, the Dicastery for Evangelization Telephone. Despite being close to the Vatican's discussions, the Chinese government critics claim that this silence could link him to the Vatican's perceived leniency toward the CCP. Tagle's background as a Filipino, with partial Chinese ancestry, and his country's involvement in territorial disputes with China, add another layer to this situation. Some observers question whether Tagle would be able to handle politically sensitive topics if he were to become pope, because he has rarely addressed the challenges faced by Christians in China. They believe that his reluctance to take a firm stance on the Vatican-China agreement casts doubt on his ability to do so. Pope Francis had taken a diplomatic approach to China, even trying to set up a meeting with Chinese President the 11th Jinping during a visit to Kazakhstan, which was ultimately rejected. This lack of response was especially noticeable during the trial of Cardinal Joseph Zen, a well-known critic of the Vatican's pact with China. Even though the trial was postponed, Zen's situation highlighted the ongoing tensions between the Church and Beijing. Tagle, who supported Francis's Tel's alliance with Pope Francis, had both benefits and drawbacks. His rhetoric often echoed Francis's, particularly when it came to immigration inclusivity and dialogue. These shared ideals appealed to progressives, but also closely linked him to the current pope's legacy, which may have alienated more conservative elements within the Church. He refrained from commenting on these developments, leading critics to see him as complicit in a policy that some claimed weakened the Church's moral standing. Critics said that the Church needed a leader who could show independence and offer a fresh perspective, which complicated Tagle's candidacy. During his tenure as Archbishop of Manila, he was accused of entangling the Church in partisan politics by publicly opposing former President Rodrigo Duterte's administration. Tagle also permitted homes to be filled with divisive political messages, which some felt violated the constitutional separation of church and state. Others in the church and state questioned whether this political involvement took away from his emphasis on spiritual leadership. Tagle's handling of clerical misconduct during his tenure in Manila drew a lot of criticism. Some said he did not hold some clergy members sufficiently accountable, casting doubt on his ability to enforce discipline within the church. Many believed that his seeming indulgence hurt his chances of becoming a strong leader, especially given the expectations surrounding the next pope. As part of the editorial team for the Important History of Vatican, the second Tel wrote a chapter that examined Pope Paul V's 666 actions during the council. His insightful analysis received commendation, though some critics claimed it lacked objectivity. Nevertheless, Tel continued to play a crucial role in shaping the Church's direction, and his opinions on the Second Vatican Council garnered respect but also generated some debate. Perspectives demonstrated his understanding of the complex dynamics of church leadership. In addition to his academic and domestic pursuits, Tel's opponents at the College of Cardinals included strong rivals like Singaporean Cardinal William Goh, who had a talent for connecting with conservative groups. Goh's ability to bridge ideological divides gave him a strategic advantage. Despite these obstacles, Tel's supporters argued that his progressive outlook and global appeal represented a beacon of hope for the Church's future supporters, thought that his emphasis on dialogue and inclusivity could guide the Church through global challenges, while detractors argued that he needed to address his alleged shortcomings to strengthen his candidacy. What revelation did Tagle make, and how did it result in the major announcement he made? Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, a prominent figure in the global Catholic community, recently made a major announcement after coming to a profoundly moving realization. This insight entwined his personal convictions. The Cardinal's announcement followed what he described as a heart-wrenching awareness of the growing struggles of persecuted Christian communities worldwide. Tell shared his experiences leading the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples, and later, the Dicaster for Evangelization, where he addressed the urgent issues faced by marginalized groups and the Church's responsibility in tackling these challenges. His aspirations for the Church have sparked a wide-ranging conversation during a special assembly at the Vatican. Encountered many accounts of Christian suffering, particularly in regions where religious freedom is severely restricted. He stated that this awareness prompted him to take a more proactive approach to these pressing issues. In his speech, Tell unveiled a new program called Faith and Solidarity, which aims to strengthen support for persecuted Christians around the world. He laid out a comprehensive plan that aims to provide both material and spiritual assistance, while also advocating for stronger diplomatic measures to protect religious freedoms. Represents a turning point in his leadership, emphasizing the Church's obligation to act decisively in times of crisis. Tell explained that this initiative was the result of his personal reflections and his travels to war-torn regions. He described a trip to a Middle Eastern region, where he met families who had lost everything due to their faith. Their fortitude and unwavering commitment to their beliefs, in the face of persecution, greatly affected him. He said that their suffering was a call from clarion. He openly addressed the criticisms of his perceived inaction on politically charged matters, particularly those pertaining to the Vatican's relationship with China. He did not specifically mention the Vatican-China agreement, but he acknowledged the difficulties of having conversations with nations that restrict religious freedom. The announcement marked a significant shift in the Church's position on some of its more contentious issues. Initiative would emphasize accountability and transparency, reinforcing the Church's dedication to protecting its most vulnerable members. Observers note that this announcement marked a change from Tagle's previously cautious tone, with many interpreting it as an attempt to establish a distinct leadership style from Pope Francis, with whom he has often been compared. By addressing the criticisms directed at him, specifically his reluctance to discuss politically sensitive subjects, Tell showed a readiness to the announcement was made at a significant time, coinciding with the trial of Cardinal Joseph Zen, a well-known critic of the Vatican-China agreement. Although Tagle did not comment on the trial, his emphasis on solidarity with persecuted Christians was interpreted as a subtle acknowledgement of the Church's obligation to support those who risk their lives for their beliefs. Critics have expressed doubts about whether Tell's initiative is appropriate, will effectively address the complex geopolitical issues surrounding the protection of persecuted Christians, particularly in places like China, where the Church's relationship with the government is noticeably strained. On the other hand, supporters have praised the initiative as a significant advancement, highlighting Tell's commitment to inclusivity, compassion, and proactive measures that align with his. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and click the next video that appears on your screen. In his closing remarks, Tell emphasized the need for collective action to help those in need and called for a united global effort, encouraging Catholics to support the Faith and Solidarity initiative.